Normally I don't like to do trailer reactions because there's so little direct representation of the final product, but as an AniTuber with a focus in studying Pokemon, I feel that I should throw my 2 cents in here. So let me say that I really enjoyed the trailer for Detective Pikachu and think that it actually has some promise as a Pokemon film. For the record, I have almost no knowledge regarding the game Detective Pikachu, which I believe is just a standard mystery puzzle game, but I hardly think that's necessary here since this just seems like an excuse to make a more general Pokemon film with a broader thematic purpose, and that's definitely a good thing. Nobody would watch this movie if it actually took direct influence from this kind of game because that would be incredibly boring and simple. What surprised me most is that it seems to be going for a more general audience of Pokemon fans. Not that this isn't something I'm already used to since Pokemon movies have had mature writing since the very beginning, but seeing an American live-action film that takes the same approach is actually pretty exciting. Like, they actually understand that there are a lot of adults who are interested in Pokemon, and adults aren't going to be interested in a movie that's actually based on the Detective Pikachu game, so moving away from that was a pretty obvious choice. We can also see this broader audience appeal in how most of the Pokemon in the trailer are from Gen 1. Not all of them, mind you. In fact, the generational spread is actually a lot better than I thought it would be, but it is noteworthy that Gen 1 has the most. Younger kids probably aren't as familiar with Dodrio or Mr. Mime as they are with Greninja or others from later generations, so this balance between old and new is important to bringing in the largest audience possible. Speaking of large audiences, Ryan Reynolds. That kinda speaks for itself at this point, but I guess I should elaborate on that. If you don't know why this is important at this point, then you've probably been trapped in the distortion world even longer than Cyrus, but Ryan Reynolds is probably the most important name they could have attached to this project, not just because of his acting prowess, but because of his reputation. The guy kinda is Deadpool sometimes. I honestly don't think this movie could work without Reynolds in the Pikachu role because, let's be real here, this is an inherently stupid concept for a movie. So having someone who can walk the fine line between irreverently burying tongue into cheek and giving the role a genuine performance to get invested in, again, much like Deadpool, is incredibly important. That, plus one of the writers from Guardians of the Galaxy being on the writing team for this movie, makes me genuinely confident that this will be a funny movie with mostly consistent humor, both verbally and physically. And now we get to the point where I have to defend the fact that this is a live-action movie and not an animated one. Trust me, I'm not excited about it either, but surprisingly, I don't think this movie would be successful as an animated film. Think about it, even if it were animated, you know it wouldn't be animated by OLM. They're busy making Sun and Moon one of the best parts of the entire franchise. They don't have time for a movie like this, and I doubt many other studios do either. If this were going to be an animated film, it most certainly would not be done by an anime studio because A, that would be way too expensive and Hollywood loves cutting corners, and B, it wouldn't match the style of humor that the film seems to be going for. I feel like removing 2D animation from the picture actually allows for more freedom with the writing. If this were animated, then people would expect it to conform to the writing tropes of the anime simply because it would look similar. Audiences tend to expect consistency when they see the same kind of style across different works, even if that's not supposed to be the case. So having it animated would set up expectations that the film could never meet. By making it live action, the writers have more freedom to write in a style that they're comfortable with. And if this film is anything like the writer's previous work, then I am totally on board for that. And while we're still on the subject of live action, I really gotta give props for the Pokemon designs. Yes, I think they look pretty good, but for very particular reasons. If we're going to do this in live action, then making the Pokemon as realistic as possible was the only option. I've seen some comparisons made to the live action Yokai Watch movie, but I don't really think that works on a thematic level to have more stylized 3D characters. Let's look at Who Framed Roger Rabbit for an example. In that movie, tunes come from a specific place that sort of exists outside the human world, and the style differences also work in setting up the conflict between the humans and tunes, so having them actually look like cartoons was the right choice. In Detective Pikachu, the Pokemon world is the real world, so having consistency of design is important to creating a more cohesive world. I really do think they did a good job with most of the realistic designs. In this case, it's not really a matter of what would a realistic Jigglypuff actually look like, because the actual answer is a fucking night terror. Instead, the question should be, how do you make a good, realistic Jigglypuff? And if that means adding a coat of fur, then so be it. Most of the designs seem to be handled this way, though there are a few that don't seem to have this in mind, like this absolutely nightmarish Psyduck. Why the hell didn't they just give it feathers like a real duck? But I'm still interested in seeing how far they go with this. Now, this isn't to say that the trailer doesn't have some parts that worry me. The plot with the main human character could turn out pretty stale if it isn't treated properly, because it's a story we've seen 1,000 times, but based on what we know so far, I'm pretty confident that it'll be mostly well written. I also have no idea why Ken Watanabe is in this movie. Is it to pander to the Japanese audiences like they did with the Godzilla movie from a few years back? I really don't know. Also, the director made Shark Tale, and that alone is kind of a terrifying thought, so hopefully he's evolved his craft since then. What's most important though is that this trailer seems fully invested in the idea that this is going to be a Pokemon movie, and not just a movie that happens to have Pokemon in it. We see a bunch of nostalgic nods to the anime, the Pokemon seem to have a diverse set of personalities, and we can already see the internal lore building up and connecting with the main plot. A kid enamored with the idea of becoming a Pokemon trainer growing up into a jaded young adult beaten down on by the world who will, hopefully, eventually learn to rediscover the magic of his youth is pretty interesting and something that a lot of potential viewers can empathize with. If the movie is like the trailer portrayed it to be, then I'm actually kind of excited to see what could be one of the very few good video game movies. But we've still got like 6 months until we see if my prediction's true or not, so in the meantime be sure to check out all of my other Pokemon and anime related content. Special thanks to Jan Rogalski, Rourketon Join, Christine Seibert, Tim Johnson, Call Me Catlord, Diane Wierzbicki, and all my other patrons for their generous support. My name is Ember, and I'll see you next time.